to order at 5:30, and then we will go.
Recording in progress.
Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 5:31. And I appreciate everyone's patience as I had to do a couple of pivoting things today. I'm pulling up the agenda right now. Just give me 1 minute. Appreciate everyone's patience. And is Tiffany here today?
I am.
Oh, wonderful, Tiffany. Do you mind, while I'm pulling up my information here, do you mind quickly running through and taking roll?
I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
All right, everybody, we'll go through the roll. Do we just do it? Do we do a call? We do a name call roll. Is that how you typically do it?
Yeah, that's how we've done it. And because I know we are limited and not having a quorum today, we can go ahead and just have folks go around and say that make it faster.
Okay, perfect. So I will call roll. Alma Jesus.
Here.
All right. Vidal Francis. Greg Evans. Beth Blackwell. Heather Buck. Claire Syret. I'm here. Brian Martinfield. Scooter Milne. Tina Thorson.
I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Rob Zako.
Here.
Gino Grimaldi. Pete Knox.
Here.
And Tiffany Edwards. I am present. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Any changes to the agenda?
I have a comment, if I might.
Go ahead.
Well, I noticed that we don't have a quorum. That could be because it's August, and nobody's here, and that's probably the reason. But I also noticed that all the items on the agenda tonight are information-only items. And SPC has talked about this in the past, but really wanted to make sure that each meeting that there's something that draws people here and why we're here. And so maybe just a thought for the future of trying to make sure that we have some action items and maybe we'd have better attendance.
Thank you, Rob. And again, I am having a couple of technical issues on my side here, so I appreciate everyone's patience while I pull my agenda and information up. Do we have anyone, again, I know we don't have a quorum, but do we have anyone online or in present that has comments from the community?
No public comment.
Okay, no public comment. Thank you. I'm kind of impressed that I'm memorizing part of our agenda, so I appreciate your patience again as I go through this. Do we want to go ahead and move into the first part of our agenda today? Well, again, Tiffany, do you mind reading that off?
I would be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So our first item of our agenda for business updates, discussion, and presentations, we have the STIF discretionary project. So Dave Roth, if you want to join us.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Dave Roth. I'm the Director of Mobility Planning Policy with LTD, and I've got a discussion item for you tonight around the STIF discretionary applications and process. So I'm going to jump right in. I don't actually have a presentation. I'm just going to walk you through this. So why are we here tonight? This is an opportunity for us to share an update around the STIF timeline. That's the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, as well as let you know the direction we're going with, some project proposals for the discretionary, the competitive portion of this fund. And we're happy to take feedback from you on these proposals, tonight. So, I'll provide a brief background on the statewide transportation improvement fund. This was enabled by HB 2017, the last big transportation package, in the state of Oregon. We're now approaching the fourth biennium of the STIF program. STIF funds are generated through a statewide payroll tax of 1/10%, along with several other sources, including fees generated through ID cards, non-highway gas tax, cigarette tax, being the three other ones. The bulk, or 90% of these funds, are distributed through a formula program based on taxes collected within a specific geographic area. And only qualified entities like LTD may submit STIF formula plans. So you're going to be hearing a lot more about the formula funds starting in October. We'll be back in your October meeting to share information about that aspect of the program. But again, tonight we're talking about the discretionary portion of the program. The discretionary portion of the program the funds are made available through a competitive solicitation to public transportation service providers throughout the state. So that's anybody who provides public transportation services. So it could be a city, nonprofit, public agency. And again, those are statewide competitive funds. So there's three pots of money in the STIF program. There's the formula. Again, we'll talk more about that in October. And then there's the combined application for three other pots of money. Those are the discretionary, the intercommunity discretionary fund, which supports city-to-city transportation options, and then some federal funds, the 5311F funds that are administered through the state and distributed to public transportation service providers. So for STIF formula, a qualified entity must submit the STIF plan in our area. LTD is the qualified entity, so we submit the STIF plan, and the dollars in your STIF plan can be used for a variety of public transportation services. The current biennium, the STIF formula plan value for LTD was $34.6 million. In terms of the timeline for the formula funds, the STIF formula plan is due in mid-January. The solicitation opens at the end of this month. I think I've heard some people talking about it before our meeting tonight. We formed a STIF advisory committee that will make recommendations to the LTD board, and their first meeting is scheduled for September 10th. Again, we'll come with some updates on the formula funds to the strategic planning committee at the beginning of October. The way this works is it will go to the LTD board, the formula funds, then the public transportation advisory committee, which makes a recommendation to the Oregon Transportation Commission, which will approve the STIF formula plan across the state. So with that out of the way, let's get into what I want to talk to you about tonight, which is STIF discretionary. So again, these are available to any public transportation service provider within the state. There is a match requirement, and that varies from 10 to 50%, depending on the project type. And applicants must demonstrate the ability to fund the match at least 20% in their applications. And it's worth mentioning that the STIF discretionary program is much smaller than the formula program. The estimated value for for the current biennium, the value of STIF discretionary is $13.4 million across the state. Across the state, that's right. I've seen two estimates from ODOT now, one that is slightly above that and one that's slightly below. So I think we're probably projecting somewhere around the same estimated amount for the current biennium. So these are funds that are really designed to support new and innovative services, to try out new things that maybe haven't been tried before, and they're for projects that you wouldn't necessarily put into your formula. So in terms of the timeline for STIF discretionary projects, Agencies, public transportation service providers were required to submit letters of intent on July 29th. So we have submitted letters of intent for our project proposals. The actual applications are due on September 5th this year. Following the application submittal, the projects will be reviewed by the Lane Area Commission on Transportation, as well as the LTD board for prioritization and approval before they're submitted back to the ODOT Public Transportation Division staff, so internal staff through the ODOT, as well as the Public Transportation Advisory Committee, again, before they go to the Oregon Transportation Commission for approval. So what is LTD's proposal for the?
If I can ask.
Yeah,
Dave,
yeah.
So is, in Lane County, is only LTD eligible to apply for these funds, or are there other entities that are applying for funds as well? And we're only talking about LTD's applications tonight.
Great question. So any public transportation service provider in the state can apply for the discretionary fund. So I'll tell you what LTD is submitting, as well as at least one other application I know of that the city of Eugene has submitted. Yeah, great question. Yeah, so difference there, formula funds have to go through LTD, which is qualified. Here are the project proposals, the letters of intent that have been submitted. Again, we have not actually applied for these yet, so we assume that these are moving forward, but not guaranteed yet. So the first one is a mobility hub site refinement and design study within the city of Florence. And this is for $250,000 that would support the site selection and concept design for a mobility hub. And this would support the convergence of multiple existing public transit services, including the Rhodey Express, the Florence Eugene Connector, Link Lane, the Florence Yachats Connector, and the Florence Express, the Coos County Area Transportation District. So the mobility hub would integrate safe and comfortable passenger amenities and will be designed to support potential expansion of public transit services, in addition to integration of future shared micro-mobility options. And so we have been working and collaborating with the city of Florence on this. This is a project that's been identified in Florence's transportation system plan, as well as the Link Lane transit development plan. So there's strong interest in formalizing where all of these existing public transportation services come together today in a place that's has much better passenger amenities and a better situation than currently eating in the parking lot of the grocery store. So could be a really nice project. The next one is the shopper shuttle replacement project. So this is for $249,000. And LTD's shopper shuttle provides low-cost transportation to grocery shopping for older adults and people with disabilities, serving multiple neighborhoods in Eugene Springfield each week. Currently, the service is operated by LTD's ride source contractor, MTM, and the shuttle driver assists passengers with their groceries and packages. Right now, so this would fund the purchase of a new vehicle. So the current vehicle is from 2015, and it will soon need to be replaced. I won't go into all the details, but this would be purchasing a new vehicle, and this addresses food availability and for certain populations that may have difficulty accessing food. So really good program. The next one on the list is Diamond Express Oak Ridge Eugene Services, and this is a request for $850,000 to support expanded Diamond Express services between Eugene, Springfield, and Oak Ridge. It will continue the Diamond Express service, and this would be seeking the 5311 funds that originate with the FTA and then are distributed by ODOT. The next one on the list is Rural On-Demand Shuttle Program in South Lane County. This project would reconfigure the transit services in South Lane County. And we've been having some ongoing conversations with both, City of Cottage Grove and South Lane Wheels on this proposal. And currently in South Lane in the Cottage Grove area, there's 3 services that are operated by South Lane Wheels. They do a mobility on demand, the LTD connector, which you're probably familiar with. There's an inside the city limits, origin to destination service. The origin to destination and the mod sort of duplicate services in a lot of ways. And then the third service is a metro shuttle that provides transportation mobility options for people who live south of Cottage Grove or outside of the city to city centers for a variety of trip purposes. So medical trips, groceries, shopping. So the proposal here is to take the origin to destination and the mod service and essentially eliminate the origin to destination service and boost the mod service. So reallocate the resources that are going to the origin to destination to the mod. So essentially adding another vehicle, another driver. And I believe that's justified. We see much higher ridership since we introduced LTE connector on the mod service, whereas the origin to destination ridership is very low. And if we can shift the remaining trips onto the mod service and consolidate those services. And then in terms of the Metro shuttle, what this would mean is currently the Metro shuttle operates 5 days a week, all day in the Cottage Grove and south of Cottage Grove area. We would reallocate some of those days of service to up to 2 new locations in the county. And we would follow our recent COCA outreach and engagement framework for how we work with those communities, have those conversations to determine where those go, as well as a data-driven process to really understand where those services could benefit other communities. So it's taking some service and spreading that out across the county.
And what was the amount for that?
The amount for this one is $850,000. And I should mention as well that because we do have an established relationship with LCOG on these sorts of services, both LCOG and LTD have submitted duplicate letters of interest, and we have some work to do leading up to the applications to determine who actually submits the actual application on this project.
What other communities in London County are being considered to reallocate the service possibly?
I don't necessarily want to name names yet, but there are some other areas that could benefit from this service that, again, there are areas that have no transit service at all, but have maybe similar needs to.
Are they outside the LTD service area?
This one, if we do go after the discretionary dollars, we could provide service outside.
Okay.
The district, yeah. Okay, the last one I have on my list is the one non-LTD application that we know of, and that is City of Eugene Downtown Circulator Service. So as part of our system review project, our consultant on that project, Nelson Nygaard, has also been doing some work for the City of Eugene, looking at downtown transit services, particularly in relation to the waterfront development area and the new city hall. And so they've been studying some different potential options for providing transit service. They've looked at on-demand type services, small vehicle services, as well as fixed route traditional bus services. And this application that the city submitted would potentially fund a project to actually get that going and initiate that. I believe what they've requested $3 million to get this project off the ground and operate it for 1 year with the discretionary. Why these projects? We went through an internal vetting process. We looked for projects that would fit well with the discretionary program, projects that are new, potentially innovative, that wouldn't necessarily be a good fit for the formula fund program. We considered other projects. For example, last round for the discretionary program, we asked for funding to purchase 3 MX vehicles, and we were awarded that funding. We considered that approach again, but for a couple of reasons, we decided not to go after discretionary funds for new MX vehicles. One, we're not quite ready to take those on right now with that funding, and then number 2, we just didn't think we would be competitive again to ask for the same I'll just mention that these concepts, they're responsive to the needs that we hear about in the outreach and engagement that we do in our communities, but they still need some refinement and work to implement. So they're not a done deal yet, but a lot more work to go into them for successful applications. So that concludes my presentation. I have to take any other questions.
Go ahead, Claire, I'll jump in, and I have to put myself in the queue. Thank you.
Other way. There we go. Thank you very much for this, Dave. I just want to point out, I believe we have 2 current members of the Lane Area Commission on Transportation on this body, plus the ODOT area manager, and I'm a former longtime Lane Act member, and so I would have been fine with you know, some a little more material in terms of charting what these were, how much you were asking for. I'm maybe, I don't want to speak for the board members, but I'd be fine with going into the weeds on this a little bit, right? So I just wanted to let you know that I was able to follow all those acronyms that yeah. So, but and with that perspective in mind, you know, I think these are, not knowing all the array of things that might have been on this list, I think these are very good ones to be on the list. The Lane Link, you know, was something that the ACT was able to get funding for and support, and so this idea of a proper mobility hub in Florence, I think the time is right for that. And so that's exciting. You know, if I was ranking these, you know, as a member of the ACT, you know, it would probably be very high on my list. In addition to the Diamond Express operations, knowing some of the struggles out there. So those are just some thoughts there. So when you do come back with the information on the formula of funds in October, feel free to, you know, be more expansive in the written materials that you provide for us. And then just curious about the Eugene Downtown Circulator pilot. So pre-pandemic, we did have the MGO. So is that being revived, or is it just being totally re-caught in terms of the mobility project for that?
So let me first respond to the request for more detail.
Sure.
So we will try to do that. I can't 100% guarantee that for the next time we see you for October, because we have so much work to do to prepare those spring months, but I will bring as much information.
You know, copies of those letters that you submitted in this packet would have been awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Yeah.
So in terms of the downtown circulator option, they've studied multiple options for providing that type of service, and on-demand services was one of the options that they looked at. And based off the engagement that they did and the analysis that their consultant did for them, that one did not rise to the top. In fact, it's sort of set aside.
What's the MGO on demand?
And goes on demand.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly. And so the 2 options, there's one option that sort of seemed to rise to the top that the city of Eugene was most interested in, and really the reason for this is because they want to see mobility options provided directly into the waterfront area.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get our 40-foot buses in.
No.
The streets are too small.
Yeah.
And so the only way to do that is to use a smaller vehicle. And so that's the proposal that's sort of risen to the top, but I don't think we've 100% ruled out an option that would still use fixed route traditional 40-foot buses, but might get up next to the riverfront and not necessarily go inside. So we still have some coordination work and some conversations that need to happen with the city on that to really refine the project.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in the queue and then I'll go to Rob and Alma, I hope it's okay that I'm managing the queue, so. I just had a question about that project as well, because so the $3 million that intended to sort of be a 1-year pilot. I'm curious as to whether or not that the funds are kind of front loaded, because I'm imagining like vehicle purchasing and things like that to where year 2, well, do we know what the price tag would be in year 2, knowing that like a lot of the capital costs would be upfront, and so maybe we wouldn't expect that it would be $3 million annually to operate that service. So I guess I'm just kind of curious if.
Yeah, great question. So we did put some numbers to the service based off the models that they're looking at, and the operating costs are quite high for the service that they like to see. In fact, the number that I saw was 2.2 million annually just for operating costs. So yeah, it's an expensive service. The way that it's set now, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Rob, you had a question?
Couple comments. First, thank you for bringing up Lane Act. Am I mistaken, or do these projects come before Lane Act typically, the discretionary ones?
My understanding is that based on the guidebook that I read, that they do go in front of.
Okay. So we'll talk about that again. I could make some comments about the Eugene project. I will refrain from doing that right now. I will just say, I think you said that there's roughly $16 million statewide of the discretionary funds. 13, not even that. And so $3 million is like 25% of that. It just seems so out of scale that it's hard for me to see that fitting in unless there are no other applications from everyone else in the state. In Lane Act, we typically sort of say, for some programs, Lane County gets like about 10%, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but kind of try to sort of say what's sort of our fair share and try to kind of gauge that. And this just seems to be out of scale. And I'm sure the CDG knows that and they're applying for that, and that's their choice.
Any other questions? All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dave. I think we'll move on to our next agenda item. If that works? Yes. All right, thank you. I'm gonna look at my Amy Reichert. You're on. Come on down.
Show us the data.
Got it. Pressure's on now. What's that? All right, good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. It's good to be here in front of you again to talk about our progress in our strategic planning. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to go straight to the dashboard. Great. So just as a reminder, this is our strategic dashboard. It's available to the public. It's updated quarterly. We have results here through June of 2024. And there have been a couple minor updates, so I'm just going to show you those. So people that are using this at home can see some of the improvements that we've made. So if you go to data exploration, we've updated it so you can sort by fiscal year, which is a request. We're on a fiscal year calendar that starts in July, not a calendar year, so this will help people all be speaking the same language together. We're be looking at fiscal year Q4 tonight. And we also have some time series data, so this is to help us visualize over time what we've been looking at. And again, you can look at that by fiscal year or calendar year. Okay, so let's go back to our overview here. And what I'm going to provide tonight is actually an overview of the entire fiscal year 24 in review. So starting July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024. And I just want to remind folks that in our strategic plan, a core vision is this commitment to transforming how the community experiences mobility. That's what underlies this data. So yeah, there's data, there's numbers, but what we're talking about is that transformation into becoming the mobility managers for Lane County. It's not just about increasing transit service. It's about weaving community engagement into the fabric of our operations, and we see that in our tactical work and how we're measuring it. So let's start out by looking at our revenue service, and for this, I am gonna go back to our data exploration time series data. We're gonna take a look first at our revenue service hours. These are pretty small up there, let's see. You guys can see at least the trend there, so obviously we have this big dip that represents the COVID period, and then we've kind of just been flat for a while. We actually made a strategic decision in Q3 of this year to slightly reduce service, and that's made intentionally. So we did set an ambitious goal in fiscal year 24 at the beginning of the year to increase our revenue service levels by 10% over our fiscal year 23 baseline. So that would be these 4 years together, roughly 56.5 thousand vehicle revenue hours provided per quarter, and that's the total number of hours in our fixed route bus being put out onto the streets. So I want to highlight that even though we're flat here, we actually are delivering on this commitment. And I'm going to show you another metric that represents that, and that's our operator count. So our active operators from the beginning of the year to the end of June 2024 was a net 10. And I am happy to report that as of today's internal dashboard review, our net operator gain is 21, which means we have 23 to go to hit the number of operators that would allow us to sustain that 10% increase. So we are on our way to hitting that goal. And simultaneously, we have implemented through our tactics such as the COCA community outreach. Somebody help me, COCA. Communications assessment, that we've implemented this robust process for engaging our public, ensuring that the community voices are shaping our transit solutions. This committee is a part of that. It represents part of that solution. This dual approach focused on internal growth and external communications it not only boosts service levels, but it strengthens our relationships. So foundations help us build relationships, creating active participants in this journey towards mobility for the community. Next, let's look at sustainability. This is something that LTE has always been committed to. I'm going to go to our active electric fleet. So going back in time, we had, when we started this, we actually started with some electric fleet because we started in fiscal year 21. Now we have 33% of our fleet is electrified. And we also are using 100% renewable fuel across our diesel fleet. And so this not only reduces our carbon footprint, it signals our dedication to a greener future, and alongside this, we're working to develop a sustainable long-term financial model to ensure that we can support green initiatives and other initiatives that grow ridership, which is really where we get the most gains in green initiatives. The more riders, the more impact we're having on our carbon footprint. And so we can see here ridership, right? COVID drop and the steady increase. We'll come back to this ridership, but first let's talk a little bit about safety. I don't have any metrics to show you tonight. When I come back next time, we will have our annual results of perception of safety and security that comes from our annual ABBG customer satisfaction survey. Those results are released this month, and then we'll bring them back to you in the fall. So we'll know more about how we're doing with perceptions. We have been making a lot of investments in that area. What I can show you is our collision data, which is a form of our safety and security. And you can see here over the last year, it's been a little bit volatile. That's not uncommon when you're adding a lot of new operators. So I think in this area, what we can expect to see is some volatility, and that includes both real information, things like incidents, assaults, this collision data. We expect a little bit of volatility as we're stabilizing a new workforce. And we know that we can continue to, what we have control over is focusing in on where we see the most incidents, applying resources there, and making sure that we're continuously evaluating how are we enhancing safety and reducing those incidents. And I think we also need to be transparent that it's not gonna be easy. I was just talking with Sarah Koski before this. We know that there's a lot of impact around housing and the unhoused as we have decisions that are affecting where those people can be. So that all affects our service. So this is an area that we're gonna have to continue to monitor closely, and we expect to remain volatile for some time. Next, I'm gonna talk about accountability and inclusivity. This is more related to our tactical work than the data, and that actually is a deficiency. But we have a disadvantaged business enterprise program that we adhere to. And over the next year, we'll be taking steps to create more transparency into this program. We're streamlining our reporting with our new financial software, which has been a big investment over the last 2 years. And we're aiming to gain deeper insights into who is utilizing our DBE program in the community, and how can we grow that? And most importantly, how can we measure it? How can I come back here and show you how we're making progress on that? And that'll be an opportunity for us over the next year. Next, let's talk about operational efficiency. So back to ridership.
Amy, real quick,
Yeah,
Grace
please.
has got a question.
Yes,
I'd love to get a little more information about that program,
sure.
you know, whether that's just a summary of it or.
Yeah, we can send you more information
That'd be great.
at the highest level. It's a program through the Federal Transit Administration that requires us to have certified vendors certified through the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program that are minority-owned businesses. And a certain percentage of all of our awarded contracts need to go to those vendors.
Great, yeah.
And we have a specific percentage goal that's assessed. What is it? 8.8 is our current percentage, and that's updated every triennial. Is it triennial or is it annual? Every triennial that's updated based on our anticipated contracts for the next 2 years. So it actually is much higher this triennial than the last triennial because we have so much construction going on and we have a lot of our DBE through subcontractors.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay, so back to our operational efficiency. This is good news, okay? So we see these high numbers over here, but we are continuing to climb. The beginning of the year, we started at 1.4 million. We're ending out our fiscal year at 1.7 million. So steady increase, and that's in spite of slightly reduced service levels. So there's a lot of things we could speculate on there. I think that is a testament overall to our effective engagement of the community and getting people back on the bus. It also represents the community need. People need this service. And our vehicle revenue hours, this is a really, as somebody that values efficiency, if we look at our vehicle revenue hours quarter over quarter, so we have 2 ways of looking at this. There's the total scheduled vehicle revenue hours, and then there's the actual revenue hours that we achieved during that bid period. And so quarter over quarter, it was stagnant. We didn't change the total hours scheduled, but in this last quarter, we actually increased the total hours provided, which is an indicator of increased operational efficiency. We're able to deliver more of the scheduled hours. That's a good thing. Okay, so a lot of good stuff here. Some challenges, a couple things I want to highlight in the challenge domain. Going back to our data series. On-time performance. So first, let me preface this with saying our on-time performance is consistently at goal. We have never, in the history of measuring on this dashboard, we haven't fallen below our goal, which is 90% on-time performance. That being said, over the last year, we have seen a slight steady decline. Also common when you have a lot of new operators. So we have a lot of new operators that are operating in high construction, that they're having to learn new routes. So we expect to see a slight decline in on-time performance, and that's something we want to keep an eye on as an important indicator of our customer satisfaction. Also costs. So the sustainable financial model, we have to really be thoughtful about volatility of our operating costs. We're gonna look at maintenance cost per mile here. You can see this is just a trend, right? We're going up continuously. You know, in each year, we always see this spike in the third quarter. That's January. It's when we're making our annual benefit contributions, as well as this past year, we had adjustments for contract wages. We typically see actually an increase in Q4. We didn't this year. It's pretty static, but maintenance cost per mile is consistently going up. This is primarily due to underlying factors related to repairs or preventative maintenance. If we were to look at the internal dashboard underneath of this, we would see that our preventative maintenance is very consistent year over year. However, our repair costs are volatile, and that's related to parts, oil, and labor. And more labor, more costs. So as our fleet ages, we have different kinds of unique repairs. So repair is the underlying challenge here. The other issue that isn't visualized here, but that we know we need to pay attention to is turnover rate. And that's something we may consider bringing to this dashboard, because as we add operators, if we want to maintain service, we have to retain them. And it's much more cost effective to retain than it is to recruit. Currently, we have a fairly high turnover rate in our operator group. And so stabilizing that over the next year and beyond will be important. So looking ahead, just to give this group an update, what we'll be doing next, at the end of this month, we'll be doing a refresh on all of our tactical work plans to make sure they still align with the outcomes we're seeking to achieve. We'll also be updating these key performance indicators for the first time since we initiated the strategic planning process 3 years ago. We stuck with these for 3 years. We're still gonna stick with a lot of them, but we know there's new things we need to be looking at, like things I mentioned tonight. How are we measuring our disadvantaged business enterprise program? And as well as how are we incorporating key experience indicators, the things that this group has talked about in terms of social outcomes, demographic information, intersectionality. These are things that we need to consider at the organizational level. And then finally, as I mentioned, we will have our annual survey findings lag slightly behind the fiscal year end. So we'll be bringing back this fall our employee engagement annual findings, as well as our customer satisfaction information. And we'll be focusing on the intersectional outcomes of gender, race, income, and other areas of interest. So back to the beginning, all of this starts and continues with this vision of reimagining mobility for the betterment of our community. We're not just moving people, we're driving change. That's what this is about. So, it's my presentation. Thank you.
All right, well, Claire had a question. Anyone else want to be in the queue? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. I really appreciate the way you present things. I'm just curious if you have the number on your turnover rate.
We do, yes. As of today, so we look at this, it's a rolling thing, obviously, in our internal dashboard, I think it was around 10%. That's a calendar year-to-date measure. I believe last year, I'd have to look it up. I don't want to misquote it, but it's around 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Really great info. I have a question about your kind of the graph about ridership, right? We know we saw this dip during the pandemic and it's been slowly returning. I'm curious about whether or not you all are capturing, or how you might be capturing, who isn't returning yet. Is it K through 12 student? I mean, is there any way that we kind of know there's an underlying factor? I'll use an anecdotal conversation that I have had recently with parents, my 15-year-old and her friends, that because of the perception of the safety perception, these would normally be kids who would be riding buses everywhere, and they're not, because their parents are feeling like that. And I'm just kind of curious if that's anything we're able to capture as far as do we know who's not coming, who hasn't come back yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. first I can say is the student ridership has remained strong and actually grown. But in terms of who's riding, most of the information we have there is at a national level. It's an expensive thing to endeavor to survey, get demographics on every rider.
Yeah.
We can look at, when we bring back customer satisfaction information, we do get demographics on that. Those are active riders, so we can look at, are we seeing any significant differences in those groups, based on gender, race? But what we're seeing through national research is it's the expected thing, that the whole structure of the workforce has changed. People are working from home, hybrid models are more common, so that's one reason. The perception of safety and security is an issue that drives people's decisions to ride, even if it is still a safe environment and the actual safety remains high, people's perceptions do impact their decision to ride. As far as LTD knowing the specific answer of who our riders are, we can parse out demographics from a lot of our surveys, and we can do that and bring it back. But I do think that the trend across the country really is around changes in workforce and those perceptions.
Yeah.
And we have planners here who are, this is their expertise, I just present the data, so.
Well, I'll just say, I think one of the things that'll be interesting to keep an eye on, especially as we head into the fall, we're going to be increasing service for the first time in years. And it'll be interesting to track, see how increasing frequency, bringing back frequency impacts ridership. So I mean, all the engagement we did on the system review is frequency. It's not convenient to people, they just.
That's the obvious correlation there. We do see that with other organizations. As you increase the availability of service, your ridership goes up.
We just got some early, 1 month in, a little over a month in, results from increasing frequency on the Brody Express. Went from an hour of service to half-hour service. Ridership has gone up 50% first month. So we'll keep tracking it, of course, but that kind of goes to wanted to point one thing out on time performance as well. There's a lot of progress being made downtown in terms of street design. I'll say it that way. I'm gonna say it that way. And that impacts, right, how quickly buses can go through. Also, with Amy brought up new drivers as well, so I wanted to point that out. One of the bigger pieces that I look at as a transit person is, did we leave the yard on time, right? Because we can control that. Did we leave on time? That gives us a good start. And then just to cover just a little bit on the maintenance costs, we have the electric buses are good for environment, but they're still relatively new technology, so they're expensive to keep running. And some of those are coming off warranty. So as those need to continue to be repaired, that's going to add to that cost of our maintenance per mile as well. And with our fairly recent CBA labor contract, that changed wages as well, and rightfully so, where market was reflected. So we'll keep an eye on that. It's some of the other reasons why those maintenance costs are up.
I see Tina has a question online.
Yes, thank you. Amy, I'm curious, how do you calculate the ridership on EMX with people just getting off and on? How do you get an accurate count on that ridership?
We have onboard counters. They're ABC passenger automatic passenger counts. That's a technology that's on all of our fleet. And that technology has to be validated that it's accurate. It's every 3 years, although we do it annually. So.
Great, thank you.
I see Alma with her hand up too.
Sorry, no, my hand's not up. I think it's just distraction in my office. Thank you.
Okay, never mind. Something on your whiteboard. Yeah. Looks like a hand.
I see something up there.
You're very
I need to
tiny.
blur myself out, sorry.
Okay, any other questions?
There's no more questions. I want one last comment. When we say keep an eye on, that's been used. I've said that, Jameson said that several times now. What that means is there are things that underlie all of these that we can measure. And so what we're trying to look at is what do we have control over, and let's control what we can. We can control if we leave the lot on time. Something that we're starting to look at is miles between road calls, and how often are we having failures? Are there certain types of repairs that happen more frequently that we need to make sure we have parts in stock for? That's the intention of a business intelligence program, which is starting to get some traction around these underlying metrics. So that's what we're starting to keep an eye on, is control what we can.
All right, thank you, Amy. And our last agenda items, Ms. Sarakovsky, come on down. You guys didn't know I was a game show.
All right, hello, good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. I'm a very visual individual, so I always bring slides with me. It keeps myself on track and it's how I learn. So I hope you don't mind. I have my slides. I also want to state for the record, I am doing two absolutely terrible things tonight. We're talking about a very, very dear topic to my heart, but I just have to clear the air. The first thing, stock imagery. Like, I'm using stock imagery for the whole presentation, so I humbly ask for your forgiveness. And then there's going to be a part in the presentation where I'm going to read out loud the words that are on this presentation. And I think that especially when we talk about trafficking and anti-trafficking initiatives, we would be amiss if we don't just continue to repeat and understand and regurgitate and meditate on these type of words. So a couple faux pas, I'm gonna just clear the air as we speak. So again, hello, I'm Sarakovsky. I'm your community resource liaison here at LTD. So humbled and honored to be here. I keep saying every morning, Ali is my witness. I wake up thanking God, thanking everything that you can imagine that I am here at LTD. I would not have it any other way. The opportunity to be here and to do the good work, and Jameson and all of the chiefs and everything that we have opened up some significant doors for us in the community. When we talk about how to support marginalized communities, what does it mean to connect our community, and how can we as LTD be that kind of linchpin or that spoke in the wheel to bring people and collaborate together. So that is what we're going to start out with right now. Next slide. So in the spirit of trauma-informed care, I think it's really important, especially when we talk about things like domestic violence, trafficking. We never know, if something personally affects us or if we've known someone who has been affected in this. Honestly, if you need to get up, get some coffee, ground yourself by washing your hands, do whatever you need to do, and just take some time for yourself, I welcome it. And I think that this is another thing that we should really start implementing in a lot of our meetings, is it's okay to just take a breath and just be like, this is too heavy for me. I don't have to push through this. So if there is any point, I will not be offended if I just see you get up and leave. All right, next slide. All right, so here is where I'm going to read to you a story hour by Sarakovsky. So what is trafficking, right? This is the U.S. Department of Justice's definition of trafficking. It is defining human trafficking as a crime that involves the exploitation of a person for labor, services, or commercial sex. So this includes two forms of trafficking: labor trafficking, which is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. Now, we live in a community where I would like to say that labor trafficking is not here in Eugene or in Lane County, right? A lot of times we see this as house cleaners or people cooking, or labor trafficking for nannies for children. Often you see it in very high net worth communities, right, where they bring in labor trafficking. However, we are seeing in Lane County labor trafficking because we have a lot of marijuana fields. And so the recruitment of young individuals who are very capricious, who want to have copious amounts of marijuana, they bring them to the field, next thing you know, their ID's gone, their information's gone, they're locked up and they're being forced trafficked to work in these agricultural type communities. So, I mean, there is a whole gamut of the type of labor trafficking that we have in this community and something worth exploring, and I'm always happy to be a resource if you have further questions. The second definition is sex trafficking, which is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for commercial sex induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such acts is under 18. And again, this is the definition from the US Department of Justice. The minimum age is very important. So if you are with an individual that is under 18, you know, we talk a lot about statutory rape, all of these different things, but if you are mobile and you're going and using some sort of mobile transport, it's considered trafficking when someone is under 18. And so we'll talk a little bit about the difference between some of the task forces that we have in Lake County, the difference between the adult task forces and the youth task forces. But again, as we talk about this, we're going to talk about a lot of the good things, right? And that's what I'm really happy to present to you is we're making progress, and it's all about education and collaboration and impact. But I would, again, be amiss if we didn't say that this is a significant thing happening in our community, whether you talk on the federal level, the local municipal level, with our sheriffs, even with our task forces, it's happening everywhere around us. So, next slide. White Transit, I was just on a webinar by the Department of Transportation, and you have this already in your packet, so I will not read this to you. But what's really interesting, according to the Department of Transportation, is it's quite simply put, trafficking is a mobile crime. You need to be mobile in order to traffic, right? To bring a entity, whether it's, you know, an individual or even drug trafficking or whatever you do, you have to be able to put that on the move. So when it comes to mobility, here we are front and center as a transit agency, right? Next slide. I love this slide because it's very visual, right? And again, we're talking about a couple things that are the harmful effects of trafficking. Those are the first two images, my stock photos. Recruitment, right? So one of the things that we see here in Lake County is individuals who will dress in the same type of high school sweatshirts as the high school around, and then just kind of hover around the bus stops, you know, the quickie marts, all of these different things, recruit young people. And again, this is not predominantly female, male. The demand for the sex industry is getting younger and younger and younger as we speak. The average age last time I checked in Lake County, the demand is for a 12 to 13-year-old individual, right? And so it's not what we're used to from the movies or, you know, when we were looking at it in the 80s and how this kind of conversation started. It's very clear that the demand is for younger, it's for youth, it's not as much of the adult cadences anymore. So recruitment is huge. So when it comes to this mobile crime, also the exploitation, moving an individual to and from, and I'm not saying that it's gonna always be on a bus. I mean, there's Amtrak, you know, there's Uber, Lyft, anything that you can do where it's mobile, those are what we're seeing. When I was starting to do the research, this is what gave me a lot of hope. And the hope was transit and trafficking intersections, this third part. And we'll talk a little bit about a statistic coming up later. The amount of times that a bus or Amtrak or a Greyhound is used for an individual's exit is astronomical because they predominantly don't have a car, they don't have their license at a time, so they're gonna try and use whatever they can to get away as quick as possible. And so we have this really wonderful opportunity to continue and connect in assisting someone's freedom, right? And then once you have this freedom, right, there's a lot, you know, I always talk about the fact that I'm 11 years clean and sober, right? There was a time where I tried very hard to stay clean, right? And then I came back because it was what I knew. I didn't break the cycles. I didn't separate myself from my friends. There was things in my mind that kept telling me that under pressure, I needed to go back to my coping mechanism. And so the same thing in trafficking is, there's a lot of different things that are instilled. So to be on that recovery side of rebuilding your life after being in that industry or in that type of work, transit is huge in recovery of jobs, recovery of family, recovery of, bringing your children back into life. And so this is kind of the glass half full portion of how we as a transit agency can really see what we're doing here as a way to assist people in rebuilding their lives. So next slide, why care? Honestly, it's not, it's not the, I don't know if I can say this on a recorded line, pimp and hoax, right? It's not like the things that we were used to. It's not, that we were just talking about the movie Taken, right? It's not this glamorization where somebody gets shipped overseas. Again, that does happen. But a lot of it, we were talking to the Looking Glass, and they said that traffickers are so well versed now in what we, as the normal community, look for signs, that you're not seeing the tattoos anymore. You're not seeing the different codes or signs or anything like that. Sometimes it's just the trafficker and the traffickee are wearing the same colored clothing, and then that color changes all the time, right? And so there's no real rhyme or reason to anything anymore. Everything is changing. Everything is so organic. A lot of things are moving digitally. But why care? Because it's a human issue and we're humans. And that's why I love this role is, yes, it's connecting our community, but it's also giving a voice to those who are vulnerable. It's allowing us to be more educated about what's in our community. And if it's just to save one person, that's a win of itself. I don't care if it was 20 or 30 years. If this and the work that we're doing could impact one life, then it's a win. All right, next slide. All right, I stole this from APTA. The APTA Transform Conference in 2023 had a really significant.
What's APTA stand for?
Oh, clear. The American Professional Transit Association. Okay, I just joined as a member, so I love how you put me on the acronym and not because I stole something.
I know, I'm all about getting the acronyms out there.
Yeah, so APTA had a Transform conference. There's some leaders in the industry who are starting to talk a lot about trafficking. And so 2023 was a huge push to get trafficking and transport out to the communities and out to the transit bureaus. And so this presentation was also presented at the PDX, the Portland Mobility Conference that APTA did. Some of our team was actually part of this presentation, and so it was shared with me. But I think that the statistics are significant. And what it says is, according to a 2018 Polaris Survivor Survey, 42% shared that their traffickers use local and or long distance buses in their exploitation. 54% named access to transportation as a barrier to leaving their trafficking situation. Again, that's what we were talking about. And 26 share that public mass transportation played a role in at least one exit attempt. So 26%, that's significant. Next slide. So national best practices. I'm a researcher, I'm a voracious reader. I really don't have a life. So if you can imagine every report, every toolkit, everything out there, I've probably read it twice, right? And so I've created a SharePoint. There's a new community resource liaison share drive at LTD where I'm gonna start putting in all these toolkits so that, this type of research doesn't get lost and we can have a really cool access point for the type of work that I'm doing here. So there is this really dense reading from the Department of Transportation Advisory Committee on Human Trafficking. They gave a lot of as a nation what transit should do, and I put that information up here. It's also in your packet. I think what we're looking at LTD and what spurred this was in April. I have the great privilege to present to our public safety supervisors and our temporary supervisors on trafficking and what trafficking looks like from a homeless lens, right? From my work at the shelter, from what we saw, and how there's an intersection between homelessness and trafficking. 64% of women who are homeless have been actively solicited to trade sex. We're talking like sex for a happy meal, sex for housing. 64% of those on the street, right? It's significant. And the things that I saw, it's only this year that the nightmare stopped, right? The things, the reoccurring. So when I presented, we crowdsourced a lot of information. We crowdsourced from the Lake County Anti-Trafficking Initiative, Looking Glass, who presented to our field supervisors before. But we got this great excitement from our field supervisors, and then it was like, what's next? Okay, we see this, we're getting educated, how do we do our reporting? So my presentation to you today is the fact that we are in this beginning stage of gathering data, collecting this information so that we can build out our policies. So next slide. Again, because I'm visual, there are four kind of I would say points on the track, like points on a map. I don't even know. I have terrible analogies tonight because I keep looking at these stock photos.
Don't worry about it.
Number one, research. We're working.
4 bus stops.
Thanks, Rob. I need to come on, sit right here. Okay, number one is the research. We're killing it on research, right? We're looking at all sorts of different modalities, local research, national standards, transit standards. The next, and actually, go ahead and go to the next slide, and then go to the next slide. So there's a lot of like hype words that people like to use that make them sound really smart, and I heard one on a webinar, so I copied it down and I'm gonna use it to you guys. And it's co-create models of best practices. That is what we are doing here. We're really proud of that. I waited all day to use that word. Co-create models of best practices. It's so much more important when you say it twice. So that is what we're doing. So as we look at the research, and let's see what I have. So I don't know if on the PDF you can click these documents. I'm very happy to share via email. I just wanted you to see with the links how to find these different things. And that second bullet point is really, really important to me. And I honestly credit Jameson for this, is when we were looking at research for our field supervisors and the training, I discovered that there was a Department of Transportation anti-trafficking pledge, and that transit agencies could be part of that pledge. And I got really excited because I was like, let's do it. And Jameson, being very good and having boundaries, was like, you know, we got to get the board involved, we got to do all these different things. And I was like, all right. But this kind of promoted the excitement of like doing the research and doing all these different things. Truckers Against Trafficking, coolest people in the world, right? I thought that they were just like these big trucks on I-5. I did not realize. You guys, I have been waiting all day to present to you, and I'm just so excited. I'm sorry that my informality, but Truckers Against Trafficking, I did not realize that as they expanded their nonprofit, they also expanded who their outreach was to. School buses, they do training for anti-trafficking. Transit, they do training, all sorts of different things. And so Truckers Against Trafficking has their own subdivision for transit. And so we've gotten connected with them. Actually, I was very proud to announce that they revisited their toolkit, and LTD was the first one to receive the toolkit for Portland Public, because I was just so excited to read it. Polaris Project is kind of that international overarching standard of statistics and information, and most accurate information on trafficking. I always like to refer people there. They have their own roadmap for systems and industries when it comes to mobility management. Next slide. All right, so we're at the connect part. This is the coolest part of the whole presentation to me. Go ahead, next slide. Is the opportunities that have come to us. So I have a counterpart in, TriMet. She's not exactly like me, as Zero. So I'm more of like an incubator of ideas, a connector of communities in the trenches work. She works on the side of a lot more of the security side, public safety, but she has a real heart for the homeless. And so we've been able to start like weekly sharing information, like texting back and forth and emails. She was the one, and I'm not sure if I presented to you or the board, that opened up LTD to be part of the National Vulnerable Populations in Transit Work Group. So Lane Transit is now part of this really cool national work group. I attended my first work group session and they were talking about security and just heard kind of like an off-topic thing about trafficking. So I emailed the woman who was from APTA about that and was very interested. Out that in 2016, she was the head of security for Amtrak and was the one who orchestrated all the anti-trafficking initiatives for Amtrak. So she spent time with me. Then she connected me with Truckers Against Trafficking, their lead on transit. That individual connected me with the foremost researcher in the nation. That individual, like the dominoes kept falling, and it was almost like we didn't just get like the toolkit and the connection. We got the best in the nation now willing to work with us. So Truckers Against Trafficking has all sorts of different things. I'll talk about it at the end. Just super cool. There are two task forces in town, the Lane County Anti-Trafficking Task Force and the Lane County CSEC, Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children Task Force. What I learned, we brought CSEC here. They actually, two young women, they're from Kids First, incredible hearts. They met with Cosette and I to kind of start talking about, what it means to be transit. And honestly, they were just so excited to come to our campus and see our sculptures and do all this. It was very tactile. What I learned was these task forces weren't talking to each other. They didn't even know each other existed. And so the work that we were doing to kind of elevate and collaborate now is allowing these task forces to come together and convene, which is really, really awesome. They're opening up the doors for local public safety. LCOG is also doing some work with us to get all the contacts. I'm working with Sam, with Josh. We're gonna bring a focus group of federal, state, county, and local police, sheriffs, feds, all of these individuals in one room. And so as we're building out the policies, and this was what was advised to us from the task forces is, it's all about safety, right? It's about the safety of the individuals being trafficked. It's about the safety of our driver operators. And so we're bringing in kind of a public safety perspective. And next slide. So what does this all mean? Truckers Against Trafficking has been really very vital in kind of playing out everything. I mean, they've given us the toolkit. There's this really cool thing that they do that's already been circulated. Jameson has it, our trainers have it, Jake and Josh have it. They created a reporting kind of guide for if a transit agency saw something and they weren't sure. It's kind of a line by line of who do you call, where do you go? And this can be, we can put our logos on it, we can fill it with local information. So what they did was they kind of created the skeleton version of a policy, like a reporting policy for transit. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And it's something that's the national standard that almost every transit agency is doing. Truckers Against Trafficking also has offered to provide us training videos for free, some incredible partnerships. And yes, so next slide, some more wonderful fancy words. So when it comes to anti-trafficking and the work in transit, the Department of Transportation has 4 big key points. The first one is whatever that we do here in transit, it should be number 1, person-centered. Number 2, built on trauma-informed response. Number 3, culturally appropriate. Like one thing that we're really working on is like tribal lands, missing and murdered Indigenous women and missing and murdered Indigenous people, right? And what does it mean to be culturally specific in trafficking? And then Amy will love this one. It is the bane of my existence, but necessary for job security, data driven. So yes, that's it. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Sarah. Claire?
Thank you, Sarah. That was a wonderful presentation. Although I had some of the same critique that Rob shared at the very, very, very beginning of the meeting about, this was all presentations. I was really excited when I saw this presentation on the agenda. It's meaningful that we're elevating this topic. So one, I want to actually really appreciate your self-care call out at the beginning of this, because it can be a triggering topic, and it's important when we're in a public setting, right, to give ourselves permission to recognize that might be coming down and be prepared for it. I also want to say appreciate your emphasis that trafficking in our community is a real thing. It's happening right now as we have this meeting. I don't have personal experience with it, but right before the pandemic, for several months, my husband and I had his 20-year-old niece living with us, and she was out on the streets, and some of the things she shared with me was clearly she could have ended up in a situation where she was, in some respects, someone tried to do that and she was like, no, that's not happening. So I'm very, very real. The fact that we know there is data to support that when football games happen in a community, trafficking goes up. It's a real thing. So I think the role that this agency can play in helping to intervene in that, to provide off-ramps for folks who are finding themselves, whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking, and having that awareness built into the work that this agency does. I think, as you said, if it helps one person find an out to recovery, then it's worth it. And I want to say what the very last parts that you were talking about the fact that you're going to convene various public safety agencies to come and have this conversation. That is a catalyst. In my experience, I've worked for the ACLU of Oregon, I've worked for different organizations, and when you can bring agencies together that they want to work together, but bureaucratic inertia and other things keep that from happening. And so I'm very excited. I share your excitement about the potential for what you're doing to create a catalyst that will be felt beyond what this agency does for the community. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Alma, I had seen your hand up. Did you?
I was going to echo, thank you, Vice Chair. I was going to echo Claire's comments about the grounding around trauma-informed mindfulness in this space when we come to space to talk about the hard things. And yeah, that again, what Claire had shared at the top of the meeting, when Rob had shared, this informational, it's the benefit of this being informational for all of us. And I just really appreciate that. And I appreciate you bringing, I appreciate Jameson's support of Sarah's role and the work that you're doing, Sarah. It's super meaningful. And the links do work in the slides. So thank you so much for those as well. I just wanted to let you know. Just really do appreciate the experience that you bring to the team, Sarah, and helping us all build our awareness a little bit more around really important topics, and not only for the agency, but I do wish more folks were looking and listening when you were sharing with this, because it's so important for the rest of for our whole community to rally around what's important right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I'll just say, as somebody who kind of works really closely with the business community, and I mean, I since you've been here and been doing this work, it's been really exciting to just kind of hear about the work that LTD is doing to engage with this issue that we're having in our community. And I think whatever we can do to help let the community know that this work is happening. So I really think that there's a lot of value in all of that. And I think that the more we can support through just helping to spread the word that you guys are doing this important work. I think it's really important. So please, just let me know how I can help. And I've got Thursday morning meetings every week. So if you want to ever come and present, I have a great audience for you. So thank you for doing this, sir. Anybody else have anything? Mr. Zako.
First, I've heard my name mentioned a few times. I didn't say the topics tonight were unimportant. I was trying to explain why we didn't have a quorum. I am here. I think it's important. Okay, and so just I want to be clear on
I
that.
took it personal, honestly, I get it, I cried in the back, but I realized by the time I got here, you notice I was a little quieter tonight than normal.
This is important work, Sarah. Thank you so much. I think some might think that this is, perhaps beyond the mission of a transit agency, but you explained very well of how mobility is trafficking means mobility and how the connection's there. I'll just add, I was really struck when you talked about the two task forces that didn't know that they existed and they're convening them together, which is very near and dear to Beth's heart. We talk about we're better and we speak and act together and all about partnerships and working together. But I'm noticing the mission of LTD, which is connecting the community. And I guess we think of that as sort of like physically connecting, but bringing task force together is part of connecting the community, and it's how we make things happen. So thank you for all your good work.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? Any other questions, comments on this? Okay, refer to the agenda. I think that we might be at the close. Any other comments from fearless leader here? Okay. All right, well, with that,
When's our next meeting?
when's our next meeting? Do we know?
October 1st.
Okay. October 1st. All right, thanks, you guys. I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.